Hello and welcome to Mom's Work. I'm your host, Kristin Weinrich, mom of two, fourth grade teacher, and lover of reading. I'm so glad you're here with us. Joining me today is mom of five and children's book author, Heather Stigall. Hi, Heather. Thanks for coming on today.
Thanks for having me.
Heather's second book, Gilbert and the Ghost, was released in August of this year. It tells the story of overcoming obstacles and making friends in mysterious places. But it's not too scary, right, Heather?
Nope, not at all. Just a little
On
mysterious.
on this week of Halloween when this episode will be published. It's perfect for Halloween, but not going to keep any kids up at night, I don't think.
No, not at all.
Cute little twist at the end. Gilbert and the Ghost follows her other book, Paisley's Big Birthday, which was released in 2023. Both books can be found at heatherpiercestigall.com, and I will link that in the show notes so people who would like to purchase your books absolutely can, or just learn more about you as an author.
Thank
Um,
you.
I'm excited to hear about your path from aspiring author to published author. And if I can just note, I remember that when your son was in my class, you came, the school often hosts authors and they come in and talk to the kids. And I remember you said to me, "Can I come in and watch?" And I was like, "Sure." And you told me that you had wanted to be a children's author and how many books you have at home and how interested you are in it. And that was, I think, 7 years ago. So it's been interesting to watch your path from talking about it to here you are now, two books later. So I can't wait to hear more about that. But first, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and this path that you took to get here, your family, anything else you'd like to share?
Sure. As you mentioned, I'm a wife and mom of five humans and one canine. She's sitting at my feet right now. That's usually where she hangs out next to me. And as you mentioned, my children attended the school where you are. My youngest, I think, was the only one who had you as a teacher.
I think I might have had
Um,
one for math. I think I had
Okay,
the fourth for
maybe.
math.
Yeah, I've
Yeah.
lost track.
Yeah.
And my oldest actually, she did her in 12th grade here in this area. They do an internship the last month of their senior year in high school, and
Yeah.
she did it in my youngest, actually, his first grade class. So she actually did her internship there at
Oh,
the
how
school,
fun.
and
I
she's now a
forgot about
teacher.
that. There you
So she's
go.
grown up to be a teacher. So
And
it worked out.
where does she teach? Like
She
in
was
Pennsylvania?
teaching in North Philadelphia, and now she's teaching in Jersey City, New Jersey.
Oh,
So
wow. Good for
she's,
her.
yeah, so
More,
kind of
that's a
close.
challenging. Yes, yes.
Yep. Oh,
Your
yeah.
kids span in age from,
My youngest is now 16 and my oldest is 27. I think that's right. Yeah.
all right.
I,
So
I lose
you
track.
you are an experienced mother and five of them too. Impressive.
Yep. Five it
Impressive.
is. Yep.
And what about you outside of, have you always liked reading and writing, or how did you, I know you're very crafty. How did you get from five children and
Very
crafty to
good.
published author?
Yeah, so it was not something that I thought to myself from the time, I always envied people when I was young who knew what they wanted to be when they grew up, and I felt like I had to have the right answer, and I never knew what that was
Right.
going to be.
I don't know.
I don't know. So yeah, I felt like I had to make things up to, for the book report or whatever the report
Right.
you had to do in school. Anyway, so I do remember something I do when I do presentations to schools. I tell the students that I didn't really know what I wanted to do when I
Yeah.
grew up. And I was inspired that we did have a children's book author come to our school one time. I remember one time. And I
Interesting.
did at the time think, oh, that would be a cool thing to do. But I didn't really feel like I maybe didn't have the chops to do it. I didn't feel confident in myself. And as I got older, I realized that's not something that you're going to earn a steady paycheck doing.
Right.
You're only going to get paid for a book that gets published. It's not something that, is a
Right.
job with a regular steady income. But I knew that I wanted to work with children in some way. And
Right.
so that sort of narrowed my focus. But in the back of my mind, while I was doing all of those things, I worked with children. So I was reading a lot of picture books
Ooh,
even before I was a mom.
right.
Um, so ended up getting my master's in social work. And I worked with children and families in that way,
Wow.
sometimes in the school. So I
Mhm.
kind of combined the things I wanted to do because I did think of teaching at one point. But when I had all those children, it became difficult and more expensive actually to work than to stay home. So
Those five kids
social
needed
workers don't
somebody to
make a
take
lot of
care of.
money, I gotta say. Yeah, the daycare would have been a little expensive for five
Yeah, it would have
kids.
been a lot. A
Yeah, yeah,
lot.
yeah. So, and I wanted to, and we could afford it. So I chose to
Yeah, I
stay
was going to
home with
say
the
you would have had to
kids.
sell a lot of books to put five
Yep,
kids in
a lot of
daycare. A
books. Yep,
lot of books.
sure thing. Yeah, and yeah, the social work jobs again. I
No,
always choose professions that don't make a lot of money. They make
not
less than
gonna do it.
teachers. So yeah. So it was one of those, at home reading picture books was one of my favorite things to do with the children, in addition to all those crafty
Right.
things I like to do.
Yes.
And so it was something that I thought of, but with five children, as you can imagine, I was quite busy. So other than jotting ideas and post-it notes and sticking them in a journal or a notebook, and I call myself the family historian. I would write down funny things the kids would say or
Oh,
do to,
yes.
put them in their little photo albums and things like that, which, create good inspiration for
Good
stories as
stories,
well.
right. And I
Yes,
love that because I have a book, or actually I have notes on my phone where I write the funny thing that the kids say, with the intention, of course, of putting
right.
it into an actual book someday. But it's funny because the kids will ask me to go back and read it. And I think it's, you think you're going to remember, and then you read it and you're like,
Yep.
I totally would have forgotten that they did that or said that. And it's, it all
Yep.
just kind of
It's true.
blurs together after a while. So I think that's
Yep.
important to
It's
kind of
true.
document. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. So yeah, so it wasn't until my youngest was pretty much in school where I felt like, oh, I have a chunk of time that I could maybe think
What am I
about
going to do
doing.
with myself?
People used to say that to me. It took me 18 years to get my kids in school all day long. And people would say that, and I said, I'm going to get a workout and a shower in before they get home from
I've got a
school.
list I've been making
That's
for
pretty
two
much all I had
decades.
time for. Because before it was either the shower or the workout. You
Right, you
couldn't
had to
fit in both.
decide. You had to
Yeah.
decide.
So yeah, I thought there's not that much time, but and anyway, I slowly immersed myself more into the children's literature world. I learned about the Society for Children's Book Writers and Illustrators, which is a global organization that supports writers and illustrators of books for kids.
Interesting.
And through that, I learned more about like why critique groups are important, and I subscribe to a bunch of blogs. I now listen to podcasts, things like that. That all help support people or give information, or you learn about classes or conferences or webinars, and just kind of learned more about the business side as well as
Mhm.
the writing side, and
Okay.
wrote and revised and over and over again. That's
Yeah.
how you get better.
And here you are.
And here I am,
How many
many
times?
rejections later.
I was going to say, how many times did you have to submit before you got one?
So I have a not yet jar. I tell the kids it's
Okay.
not a rejection jar, it's a not yet jar.
I like
And
that.
every time I submitted a story, and this is not this is a combination of submitting multiple stories to agents
Okay.
who would represent me, as well as directly to publishers. There are some publishers who do not accept submissions from unagented authors.
I got you.
So
Are
I
they
wanted an agent.
the bigger
Yes, the
companies?
generally
Okay.
speaking, but sometimes if you go to a conference or you attend a webinar, sometimes you have a little submission window. They give you a little code, and for 30 days or 2 months or whatever it is, you can submit, one story to
Oh,
this editor.
interesting.
So
Okay.
sometimes I would have an opportunity like that, or I sought out some smaller publishers, but I also was looking for an agent. So I would try submitting one story to maybe a handful of agents to see if I got any traction there.
Okay.
Sometimes you hear nothing. If you don't hear from us in
That's
X
your answer?
weeks, it's considered
That's
a
true.
no. Yeah. Or sometimes you would get a form rejection. And none of the rejections that I actually received said something like something that hinted your writing is terrible. So I thought, okay, unless there's something specific, like your ending fell flat or something specific
Right.
about your story to go back and revise, it's not a fit or it's not the right time for the story or whatever it was.
Okay.
So through that whole process of submitting, over about 3 years of submitting to a combination of editors and agents, a few stories, it took 100, because I had
Wow.
$100 in my jar. I would put $1 in the jar every time I got a pass,
Nice.
or it went by that, 10 weeks. So
Right.
on the 100th one was when I got a yes for the first book,
Okay.
which
And
came out a
actually,
couple
when you
years
think
ago.
about it, it wasn't thousands. It wasn't
No, it
thousands of
wasn't
dollars. It was just
thousands.
100, which
And right, that's
I mean,
true.
sure, as rejections, it feels like a lot or a not yet, but hey,
Yep,
it could have been
yep.
a
So
lot
it was
more.
100 before I got that book, and that was directly to a publisher that accepted submissions from an
Okay.
unagented author which I was at the time. And then I kept submitting after that. While that was in process, I kept
Right.
submitting after that to agents, and it took 40 more before I signed with my first agent.
Wow.
And then she submitted for me. So then once I was
Okay.
represented, she would submit for me. And I think it was maybe another 20 or 30 before I got a yes on, the next story, which is the one that
And
Gilbert and the Ghosts. So
Question for you, like I'm thinking of it as like early decision for college. Let's say you're
Yeah.
submitting the same book and like it's your lucky day and you get two letters from different publishing companies on the same day. Like can you negotiate that? Are you
Yeah.
beholden to them? Like, I mean, I guess.
Yeah, it is a little like college applications, except you might not get your responses all at the same time. So, like for your college applications, you have rolling admissions, but you also have like you generally hear
December
by a
15th
certain
or
date
whatever.
because
Right.
you'd have to make a decision by whatever it is, May
Okay.
15th or 5th or whatever
Just
they.
in time to ruin your Christmas, December
Yes,
15th.
yeah,
Yeah.
right. So, in my case, well, so you would be submitting if you have an agent. Typically, very often, your agent is submitting to a rounds. Often they do that. So they'll submit to maybe 10 publishers,
Okay.
and they wait to hear back from that group. And if you're getting rejections that are things like, "Oh, I liked this, but the ending fell flat," that was an example I gave. You might then, before you submit to any more, look at the story again to decide, oh, maybe we can do something with this ending to make it more appealing. And then you can't submit to that person again if they've passed. But then
Oh,
for your next
interesting.
round, you can
Okay.
submit to, 10 more publishers and see if you get some there. But yes, if you get a yes back, um, and same thing with myself with an agent, if I got a yes from one agent or she asked, to, see more work or if she wanted to offer representation, I can go back to anyone else who had a submission out. Same thing with the
Okay.
story. And then they would say, hey, we have an offer, from someone else. Do you want to respond? Because sometimes somebody hasn't
It
gotten
gives
to it
you
yet.
a little leverage.
Yes, it does give a little leverage. It's, it pushes them to read. So sometimes it's, you're at the bottom of their pile and they haven't gotten to you yet. So if we get a yes from one publisher and my agent goes back to the other publishers and says, okay, we got a yes. So can
Hurry
you
it up and
respond
read that
within,
book.
yeah,
Yeah.
you got 2 weeks, we got it, or whatever
That's
it is, you give them
interesting.
a deadline. Yeah.
No, thank you for that because I didn't know how that
Yeah.
all
So
worked.
it's a little like college admissions
College,
because you
yeah, sort
can,
of.
is sort of,
It's sort of
yeah.
a
And then,
game, sort of
yeah,
not, a little bit.
yeah, yeah,
And in your quote unquote spare time, what
yeah.
is it that you like to do?
Well, I like to bake. You probably were the recipient of a few
I
Christmas cookies
believe
at
that I
the
was, and
holiday
some
times.
greeting
Yes.
cards.
We
And I think I was telling my daughter that you had made her like a little bunny lovey. And I
Oh
think
yeah,
it's
so
one
I
thing
like
I
to
think like
sew. That's actually my side gig. So while I mean, one of the things that you can do when you're learning how to do this is you can attend conferences, but they
yeah,
cost money.
right.
So and again, like I wasn't bringing in any income, so I'm staying home with the five, and my husband worked for the government at the time. So one of the things that helped me was I would do custom sewing work for people. I'd make window treatments and pillows, and I
Forgot
still do
that.
that. And then
Yeah.
I would save that money and I would use it to spend on going to conferences so that I
Nice. You were
could.
supporting the habit with the
I
other
was
habit.
supporting the habit. That's right. So yeah, so
Doing
I do
one habit for
custom
the other. Hey, that
custom
works
work
out
and
well. And you were
yeah,
home, and I love it. I
right.
love it.
And yeah, so I like to bake and I like to sew and I like to watch TV and movies and read. They're all forms of story I like.
Yes.
And now that my kids are older, I'm able to travel a little bit. My husband does triathlons, and so sometimes that brings him other places and I tag along.
Wow. You've got quite the full life.
Yeah, it's pretty good. There is light at the end of the tunnel. When your kids get a little older, you have a little
Right. When
more
the
time.
youngest one, you're like, all right, buddy, time to
And
go.
I don't have grandchildren yet, so they're not, hitting
Right.
me up for babies free babysitting. So which I'm
Right. So you maybe
happy to
have
do.
like
Just
5, 10 years
yeah, maybe.
before you're gonna have more kids around, which
Right.
I'm sure you'll love. All right. I have
Out of five, I probably will get at least one. I'm hoping.
I would think so. Yes.
Yeah.
Or maybe like 25. You never know.
Yeah.
Careful what you wish for, right?
Right.
That'd be a lot. Just be spreading yourself thin. All right, I have a couple of questions that are a little more specific so that we can get to know, you as a mom a little bit better. And one of them is how do your own children, although I was going to say the dedication in, I think it's Paisley's big birthday kind of answers this question where you dedicate it to all of your children, but one especially. But anyway, the question is how do your children inspire your work or your career goals?
Yeah, well, as I said, you can imagine with five children, they provide a lot of
Oh, a
distraction. It
lot.
was
Yeah,
hard to.
free stories.
Right. It was beyond writing little snippets of ideas down in journals or post-it notes.
Yeah.
It was difficult to get chunks of time in to write stories. But they also provide a lot of inspiration. So a lot of those notes are written down, got my imagination rolling, and
Right.
I was able to come up with, different ideas, story ideas. And also when I would share picture books with them, because I love to read, other people's published picture
Right.
books, obviously. And I could see what engaged them and what they liked and what they didn't like. And it would help me to learn,
Yeah.
what worked in a picture book and what didn't. And of course, every, listener or reader is different. They're not going to respond to the same kind of story, but it did
Right.
help me to see where did they laugh and why, and what made a good page turn. And if
And
something
isn't
was too long and boring, I'd be like, yeah, me
Yeah,
too.
I got to
Let's
move on.
move on to the next one.
This is
Yeah.
not the technique. Don't you
Right.
find it interesting too? It's like the simplest of stories, especially when they're baby. I mean, it makes sense because they're babies and toddlers, but like the simplest of stories. Like I'm trying to think like my son when he was 3 or 4 wanted to read Spot Sleeps Over every night and for like 8 months until finally my husband was like, I don't know where that book is. And it was like on
Yeah.
the top shelf of a closet. But you're like, we have hundreds of books in our house and he just wanted to read that. Yeah, and who knows what it is that does it, but or
Yeah,
Good
it
Night
is
Moon, or
amazing.
you know what I
And
mean?
yeah, and as a picture book author, I think one of the reasons I'm drawn to that format as opposed to novels,
Mhm.
I mean, some people think that it's easy or easier to write than a novel because
Yeah.
it's fewer words, but you have to tell the whole story of a novel in 500 words or less when you're
Right. Is
writing a
that what
picture
it
book.
is?
Yeah,
Wow.
like average for a fiction picture book is 500 words or less. And I am
Okay.
proud to say that I've written one in 80 words, which did get up to a little over 100. So I
Look
have
at
one
you.
that's very short.
You're like
But it's
Dr.
it's
Seuss.
like the math brain side of me. It's like a
Right.
puzzle to figure out what is the right word to put, every word you have to hold on trial to know,
Right. And you probably have
what's
to
going to
have a,
work.
a good vocabulary and a good grasp of like how to make an impact with just a few words. And I remember I took a class in picture books in college and I loved that class. And the professor was Dr. Kerper. Dr. Kerper, if you're listening, it's me. But he was very stern and he was very serious, but he was on some of those like critiquing, committees and I mean he knew so much about pictures books and he had a huge collection and he was really quite a font of knowledge, but I remember him saying, and I'll tell the kids in my class this and tell me if you agree because I was in college just a few years ago. um, but it's not truly a picture book unless the illustrations tell more of the story. Like if you think of Officer Buckle and Gloria, if you just read those words, oh, Officer Buckle's going to the school and telling the rules, but then Gloria in the illustration is in the background acting like she's being electrocuted or whatever. And he's like, this is a true example of a picture book because one can't
Yes.
exist without the words and the picture
Yes.
have to exist together.
Yeah, and that is another thing you have to figure out because I do not illustrate. There are some picture book writers who also illustrate, and I do
Right.
not. I only do the text. And it is something that you have to learn how to do, how to write and leave room for the illustrator to do at least 50% of the job. Because there are wordless picture books,
Yep.
right? So those are
Right.
going to be 100% the illustrator's job. And a book like Officer Buckle,
Mhm.
that is going to be probably more shown in the illustration than 50%. If Sam and Dave Dig a Hole is a perfect example of something that is done where if you read just the text, you would
Mhm.
have no idea what was going on. You'd be like, I don't get it. I don't like this book.
I don't
But if
understand.
you see the story, if anybody who's out there has read that one, because the kids are digging and they're like, let's turn it a different direction. And the illustrations are showing if they had just dug a little bit further, they would have hit treasure.
Oh,
And
interesting.
the
I don't think I've
page.
read that book, or it's been a
Oh
while.
yeah,
I'll have
that's
to go
by
back and
Mac
look.
Barnett and John Klassen.
Oh,
And
interesting.
yeah, that's a perfect example of where you heavily lean on illustrations to tell that story. If you just read the text and you didn't have the pictures, you would have no idea. You would think this is a lousy book. I don't understand.
Interesting.
They're digging and
Yeah.
that's it.
Right.
I
And so
don't get
they
it.
they work
Yeah.
hand in hand. And like you were saying, like the wordless picture, or mostly wordless picture book. Another one, I think by the same author of Officer Buckle and Gloria that my kids loved was Goodnight Zoo. And you have
Yes.
to look at the pictures and
Yes.
the mouse is pulling the banana and the gorilla is tiptoeing across the yard. And my kids love that story too. But again, like you have to look at the details in the picture. And I think maybe that book has 10 words in it or something.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
So
very short. Yes.
yeah, it's quite an art to be able to do it. Um, okay, so what is your one parenting hack that makes your life easier?
So this is one that I
You have a
still do,
lot.
even though I don't have, yeah, I do
Yeah,
have a lot, even though I don't have all five living at home full time
right.
anymore. My grocery shopping, I had
Oh,
it down.
Okay. Tell
So
me
with
more.
5 kids, multiple, they all even if they only had one activity per season or a year or whatever it was, I was in the car nonstop for hours after school and then in school and whatever. And I don't know how people do it by going to the grocery store every day or
Oh,
standing there and thinking, what are we having for dinner tonight? Oh, no, no. So plan ahead. So
yeah.
it may seem a little nutty, but I would plan my meals a month in advance.
Oh, wow.
I would look at the calendar and figure out, all right, when do we have, soccer? Like, when am I not going to be in the kitchen for three
Right.
hours? Like, I'm not going to be
Right.
able to cook when we're going to be, in the car for 3 hours on Wednesday night or whatever, or there's a, track meet or whatever it
Who's
is.
having grilled cheese? Yeah.
Yes. So,
Yeah.
well, that's the other hack. So then I would look at it and think, okay, when is it going to be crock pot meal night? Because I can put the meal in at noon, but I can't be there to cook it, at
Right.
7 or whatever time you eat. So I would plan kind of meals around activities and schedules and when I would be home. I did always have backup plans. So always having ingredients to do something like that, grilled cheese or open a can of soup or a bowl of cereal,
Right.
whatever it was.
Something.
As long as they get fed, it's fine.
Yeah.
So if everybody like something happens, we can always make something quick. But then I would look like on Sunday nights, or Sunday, Monday, whatever it was, I would look at the week's meals. I would have my recipe cards or whatever it was all
Right.
out. I would have buy the and put on the grocery list. And I have this grocery list that I would type up in order of the grocery store aisles
Oh, wow.
and
You could
list all
start a
the things
company.
that, yeah,
Okay.
list all the things that were frequent purchases,
Yeah. Yeah.
So in other words, in the produce aisle, I would have apples, bananas, whatever, and I would just have to circle all the things that we needed.
Wow.
And if somebody during the week,
Keep
mom,
saying
we're out
wow.
of
I'm
peanut
so
butter
impressed
or
by
whatever, because
this.
I don't eat peanut butter every day. So if we're
Okay.
out of peanut butter, I don't know unless somebody tells me. So if somebody
Yeah.
says, mom, we're out of peanut butter gets circled on the list or whatever. And then I then can just go up and down the aisles and get everything that I need and because it's all circled, whatever. And then
Yeah.
I check out and I get home. And if I didn't get it that week at the grocery store, too bad. Next week, you got to wait until next week to get
So
those
you would
pretzels
do
or
it every week, but you would plan.
I planned my meals out by the month. I mean, things
Right.
could change, but it was
Okay.
sort of, okay, here's what my month looks like.
I gotcha.
Wednesday nights are going to be crazy. So
Mhm.
that's going to be crockpot day or
Yeah.
whatever it was. And then I would plan the meals out for the weekend. On Sunday night, I still do it. On Sunday night, I look at the week. Okay, this is what I'm going to do. Here are my recipe cards. These are the ingredients I need and get them all at the grocery store. So for a family of 7, I could be in and out of the grocery store with all of my stuff and check out in under an hour
That's
for the
impressive.
week. That's
That
it.
now, did you ever have to go back for like extra milk or extra fruit or anything? Or
Only if we were out of emergency things like diapers
oh,
or milk or something like that.
otherwise, too bad.
Too bad. You got to wait. If
That's
we're out of pretzels, I'm sorry. You can live without
yeah,
pretzels. It's fine.
find another carb. That I do it
Yes.
once a week. Like I usually sit down on the weekend and I'll plan out, and I try to make a meal that'll feed us 2 nights in a row. So it's a lot of like
Yep.
casserole kind of stuff. And I feel like that's a whole
Until they
other
get to be teenagers and then there are no leftovers.
I know. I don't know that I have enough storage for when that happens because Ollie's already, he's like, can I have more? I'm like, are you hungry? He's like, yeah, I'm starving. I'm like, you just, okay. So
Yeah.
yes, he's
When they
only
get to
8.
be teenagers, particularly boys more than girls, at least in my experience,
Yeah.
and yeah, there are no leftovers. And I would have to double basically with 7 people, we'd have to double the
Sure,
your recipe
sure.
for everything. So
But
yeah.
I mean, because certainly, like, I usually plan like Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And then, like you said, I'll have like a Trader Joe's. I'm like, well, I'll just have grilled cheese and then, but if we kind of just let it go, like, I find that, oh, we'll just figure it out. I don't know how people do that because I'm
Yeah.
always like, I guess we'll get pizza. You know what I mean? Like, I have to have a plan or say, like, oh, well, we can have eggs. I don't think my husband likes having eggs for dinner because if he is working from home on a day that I'm like, we can just have eggs tonight during his like lunchtime, he'll come up with something. And I'm like, oh, I should say we're having eggs more often. And I was like, it really doesn't bother me to have eggs, but like you, I like to have a plan because it's already,
If
I usually cook it on the weekends and then we just heat it up and it just,
Yeah, and to me, if I have to stand there and think about what I'm
oh,
having,
no.
that's too much brain power. I have other things I have to do. I
And
don't
then
want
you'd
to have to
also
think
have to
about
go
it.
back. Like I swear, if I just like went into the grocery store and like picked things up, I'd be back 7 times that week because it'd be like, oh, I forgot
Yeah,
this, oh, I forgot
yeah,
that. Oh,
no,
yeah,
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 can't
no.
do that. Nope,
All
that's
right.
not allowed.
I'm gonna try to
You didn't
level
tell
up
me
on
we needed it on.
we
We're
are
not
not
getting
going
it.
back.
Sorry. Nope. And
I'm gonna
when
have
they
to
were
level up to
little,
you, but
right. And when they were
okay.
little, I would take as few kids with me as
Oh, yeah.
possible just to get in and out. And I would allow usually the whoever was the youngest was with me. I would allow them one impulse buy.
Okay.
So if they, if they saw that sugared cereal or whatever, I'd say, okay, but that's the one thing, that's not on the list that you can get. And if they'd
Here
see
you really
something
want
three
it.
aisles later, I'd say, okay, well, you have to choose. Do you want the Fruit Loops or do you want the, whatever,
Yeah.
the Oreos or whatever it was? And I would allow the one purchase. That was sort of, they knew the deal. They all
Figure
still
out what
remember
you
that.
want.
That's
That's
right.
it.
Figure out what you want. You get to choose one.
And I think you sort of already answered this question of how has your career evolved since becoming a parent? And how about this part of it? What have you learned about yourself in the process? Because you kind of talked about, but what would you say you learned about yourself? I think that's an interesting question.
I mean, as you can probably imagine with my grocery store hack, that I'm a pretty organized person.
Yes, I
I
would
kind of
say.
thrive on that. But
Yes.
when you have five children, something's going to go wrong probably every day. So
Right.
I kind of had to learn how to let go things that were out of my control and figure
Okay.
out it's triaging, like figure
Yeah.
out what's important. It's, okay, we don't follow that recipe tonight, whatever, we're having grilled cheese.
Right.
There's something else we can do. It's kind of whatever it takes, priority. So yeah, you kind of have to I learned how to let certain things go,
Mhm.
what was most important to me at the time and,
Yeah.
what we can, let go,
See, and I would
what I
always
can
think that
let
a
go.
person with 5 kids would have to be pretty laid back in general because it's like living in controlled chaos, but
I think I had to learn that. Like it was with
Right.
each child that I added to the family, it was
You're
sort of
like,
like,
I'm
well,
a
you know
little
what,
more
mom,
relaxed
right,
now.
when I do that laundry, my drawers can look really nice and neat and you do whatever you want to do.
Right.
They're clean. I don't care what your drawer looks like.
I have a checklist, but we don't necessarily have to follow it. It's fine. It's fine, right?
Right, right. It's fine.
Uh, okay. So let's talk about our win and our challenge of the week. Did you have a win this week?
That was hard for me to think of. I was hoping that I would be able to say that I went to bed before midnight every
Oh,
night this
love
week,
that.
but I didn't quite hit 7 days. So
Not
that
so
would have
much.
been, that would have been good. So yeah, I've just been, when I had this new book out, as you mentioned, it came out
Yeah,
in August, but because it's spooky season and it's got ghosts in the title, I've been very busy, which is great with
that's great.
promoting it and at a lot of
Yeah,
bookstore events. But because of that, I've also found myself very way up late at night trying to, finish things that I'm not getting done.
right.
So I have been up very late the last couple of weeks. And this past week, it hasn't been bad. A couple
Okay.
days I got in bed and, before midnight. So that was a pretty good
Hey,
win for me
are
this
you
week anyway.
usually are you usually early to bed, early to rise?
No,
What are
no,
you?
I'm not. I am not a morning person.
Okay.
I have to ease out of bed, and if it's still dark when I wake up in the morning, it feels like I should still be sleeping.
And
So
that's
this time of
coming,
year is
so
tough. Yeah, this time of year is tough for me. I'm
yeah.
much better in the spring and summer when the
Yes.
sun wakes me up. But I can't stay up as late as I used to be
Okay.
able to. So
Okay.
what happens is it's bad. It's a bad habit. I'm sitting on the couch and I'm getting things done because it's quiet and I'm focusing, and then I start to fall asleep and I fall
Mhm.
asleep on the couch. And then I wake up and I'm thinking I should have just gone to bed,
Just go to bed and do it tomorrow.
Right. And then I get kind of a second win and I'm getting something done and then it's harder for me to fall asleep. So
Right, because
yeah,
then you're like amped up again.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. But
yeah.
hey, there's always next week. Aim for like 10:45. I don't know.
Right. How about you? What was your win?
We got to go away for I'd call it the weekend, but it was really about 36 hours. We went to the shore on Friday night and came home yesterday morning, and it was just beautiful weather, and it was kind of like a little taste of summer again, but in a preferred temperature for me, like 65, 70.
Oh,
But
you like it
we
cooler then.
we were
Okay.
on the boardwalk and we walked around the little shops and we went to playgrounds and we went to a pizza place that we like. We went out for ice cream and so it was nice to just be away, have a little change of scenery before it really, really gets cold to have that
That's
little,
very,
feel.
very nice. I love the beach. That is my happy place. So that would have
Yes.
been
And we didn't even
nice.
step foot on the actual beach. So to me, I'm
Oh,
like
but
a bigger win. My kids are like, "Are we going to the beach?" I'm like, "No, no, no. It's too chilly and gosh, we just know all that sand." But they like to just be, in the town. So that was fine.
right.
Yeah. Because
Oh,
if
that
I
sounds
took them,
good.
they would have been in that ocean. And I'm like, I don't feel like dealing with the sand and
Yeah,
the wet
it's a
clothes.
little, yes, to say a little chilly for that. Yeah.
Because you say like, oh, we'll walk on the beach. No, they're like, swimming with the sharks. And I'm like, can we? Yeah. Anyway. And how
Yeah.
about your challenge? Did you have a challenge?
Let's see. I have to think about this past week. What happened this week? Well, I made it through the weekend, I guess was
There you
my
go.
I had busy book things this weekend. So
Yeah.
made it through. It
But
was all
hey,
good.
that's kind of a good challenge, right?
Yeah. It was
Good
good.
challenge.
Yes, a
Yeah.
good challenge.
And you're staying in, like, I've been seeing your things on Facebook, like in the local-ish area, right? Like tri-state area, Pennsylvania,
Yes. Yeah. I have a
Delaware.
couple in New Jersey. Yeah, this weekend's going to be even more challenging because I've got one event Friday night, one all day Saturday, and two back to back, one in New Jersey and one in Pennsylvania on
Oh,
Sunday.
wow.
So I'll
You
be
just
New
have to
Jersey,
smile the
Pennsylvania,
whole
New
time.
Jersey, Pennsylvania. Yeah.
You're like
It's a lot.
on. That must be exhausting because you're.
It is. It's good, exhausting, but it is good. And I
Good
have
mix.
a friend who writes middle grade, and she had a book that came out, a spooky story that came out the month before mine. So we've been doing some events together. So we're going to see each other four times this weekend
There
at
you
all
go.
four
Hope
events. So
lots of togetherness.
yeah.
My challenge, I was just saying to my husband before we got on here, I was like, I know this is like the age old, and you probably are not living it as much right now, but I'm sure there was a time where it was, you were deep in it. And that's it. I just feel like there is never enough time to do, especially as a working mom. And again, a stay-at-home mom, a working mom, like we're all working, but I'm like, I'm out of the house 8 to 9 hours of the day. And I just feel like, we got home yesterday at 12 and my kids were watching the Eagles. My husband was watching the Eagles and I was, and this is not like, oh, they were sitting on the couch. This is just the point of like, they were watching the Eagles. I went to the grocery store. I did the laundry. I unpacked. I made dinner. I cleaned up like, and at, 8 o'clock when my son was, there was a lot of nonsense in the shower. And I was like, I literally have not sat down in 8 hours. Can you just take a shower? Like, because you just, and then I woke up today and I was like, I don't have everything done. And we had the day off today. And still, like, the kids want to go do something fun. And while I would love to just do fun things with them all the time, I'm like, buddy, like, I got to pack lunch and we have to do this. And our house is a mess. And I just feel like, so we went to and ran a couple errands. We went to a playground. But then, like, even now, it's like, oh my gosh, it's already 5 o'clock and I haven't done this. And there's just not enough
No,
time. And
yes, I agree. That was my superpower would be to pause time so that I could like
yes,
catch up. I don't know that I'd ever get caught up, but yes, I completely relate. And and mom tends to do, dads do too, of course, but I mean,
of course.
the kids don't understand when the parents have other responsibilities. I would love to just sit there and,
Would love
play or
to.
go to the beach or whatever it was, but like
Yes.
that trip that you took, I always joked about that. Family vacations are not really a vacation. It's a
It's just,
trip.
yes,
But
with your
yeah, and
children. You're
all the
just,
preparing you have to do to go there, pack
yes.
and
Oh my
organize and
gosh.
whatever, and whatever if you need to have a pet that has to be cared for or whatever's happening while you're
Just
away.
parenting in a different location.
Right. And then you come home and it's like, well, now I have to do laundry and unpack it. Oh, the grocery, I have to get my refrigerator filled with food and
Mhm. And
sign all those papers that need to be back at school by
yes, I'm
tomorrow.
like,
And
oh,
yeah.
we're back in the routine. And I know it could sound very first world problems, like, oh, I spent the weekend at the shore.
Yeah.
But like really,
Yeah.
I spent like 30 hours at the shore. And considering it's a 3-day weekend, I felt like, still looking at yesterday and today as quote unquote the weekend, like there still was not enough time. And
Right. Yeah. No, there never
uh,
is enough time. I agree. I agree.
anyway, I think a lot of people can relate. But
Yeah.
anyway, let's move on to talking about your book that we've been kind of hinting about. Very appropriate for this time of year, Gilbert and the Ghost. Would you like to give us a little quick snapshot of that, what it's about? Maybe leave the.
Sure. It is. Yeah. Yeah, it's called Gilbert and the Ghosts, and it's a picture book. So we talked about that. They're illustrated. It's written by me, and it is illustrated by Jess Mason. And it's about a boy named Gilbert who often feels invisible, just like the ghost he believes lives at 632 Savannah Street. And despite his family's disbelief, he's got a brother who says no such thing as ghosts and a sister who always has a logical explanation for everyone. He leaves gifts for the ghosts, and they disappear one by one. So, of course, he believes the ghost is taking them. So it's really a friendship story, even though it has ghosts in the title.
Yeah.
And so it's perfect for spooky season because of the ghosts in the title, but it's good year round because it's a friendship story.
Yeah, it was real cute when we read it. I was like, oh, I like how this worked itself out. And it's real cute. I'm looking at it right now. Cute illustrations. And do you have
Yes, yes.
any input in like the illustrator? They just kind of do their thing, or do you get to?
Yeah, not really. So at least in the US publishers, generally speaking, if you don't also illustrate, I work with an editor on the text. They
Okay,
would come back and see if, what they wanted me to revise anything. And then once that's kind of final, the text goes to the illustrator and the illustrator is probably in the meantime has seen at least a rough draft of
okay,
the text. I mean, even before it's edited, and they're working on a cover because they usually want the cover done first so that they
that
can
makes
get that
sense.
out and promote it.
Yeah.
And then the illustrator works with an art director and a design, like a book designer, to work with the art. So they have their own. Sometimes I might see sketches at certain stages to let me know, how it's shaping up to give me an
Okay.
idea of what it's going to look like. And if I had any kind of an objection for some reason or input, they would take it into consideration. But I mean, I personally feel like I'm not the illustrator's not telling me how to do my job, so I'm
Right,
not
right.
telling them how to do their job. I think there's a little bit more of collaboration, if you would call it that, with nonfiction stories, particularly if
Okay.
the illustrations have to be accurately depicted for
Yeah.
whatever reason. So if there was a story about a tennis player and it took place in a certain date and the illustrator drew pink tennis shoes and that wouldn't be allowed in Wimbledon or whatever, like they would say, or something, that wasn't historically accurate. In my case, what I saw was I did see cover sketches and I saw a final cover. I did notice they showed me a spread, and I noticed that there was a wind chime on the depicted on the house on the cover, but it
Okay.
wasn't in the interior
Oh,
spread or vice
interesting.
versa. And I just said, just wondering if there was a reason for that,
Yeah.
or otherwise it would need to be consistent because the eagle-eyed children who are reading that are going to
They're going
notice
to
it.
notice it. It's going to be the first thing
Right.
they notice. So you
Yeah.
do have to give up a little control there. Like I'm just thinking for myself, if it were me, I would kind of have a picture in my head if I were writing the story of what it would look like and what the setting is. And then to kind of release that to somebody else, you're like, ooh, okay. And
Yeah,
maybe their picture would be
a lot of
better
people
than I
thinks
would
that's
imagine.
yeah, a lot of people think that's strange. I mean, the illustrator could have drawn Gilbert as an elephant for all I knew, right? I
Right,
mean,
right, right,
I didn't say anything in the text about him being a boy, actually, or,
right.
um, but a lot of people think that is really strange. I do think visually, but it's more like watching a movie in my head and not necessarily for what the character specifically look for, but
Okay.
kind of the action behind it.
Gotcha.
But I know a lot of people are thinking, oh, this is inspired by my child, and my child is, female and red hair and
Yeah.
freckles. And then the illustrator comes back and it's a boy with dark skin and, green eyes and, or whatever.
Right.
And they're like, oh, that's not what I, had in my head. But again, it's the illustrator is the expert there, and they're working with a professional in the publisher to,
Bring it all
create this
together.
beautiful book, bring it all together.
We
So,
give them, what
I
is
mean,
it?
I
Oh, an
did see it
artistic
one,
license.
yeah, and I did get to see like a not quite final, and they showed, and I was going over both text and looking at the art, and there was something that I pointed out. There was like a ball missing from a scene where
Oh,
it's mentioned ball in the text, and
okay.
so I said, so can we put a ball in there, or do you want me to change the text? Like, which is easier
Oh,
for her to do
yeah.
at this stage? Because it
Yeah.
wasn't important in the words that it be a ball game or some other game that they were
Right.
playing. That wasn't important. So I offered to change the text and gave an alternate. And that's what they decided to go with rather than put the
Interesting.
ball in there. So
Okay. Quite the
yeah.
collaboration. What was your favorite book as a child?
Ugh, you ask these questions, like which is your favorite child? I
Right.
don't
Which
know.
house?
I don't know if I had a favorite, but some of the ones it'll date me. You'll just see how old I am that I remember. Are You My Mother was one, if you know
Oh,
that one with the
yeah.
burning, yeah.
I
So
think we
that's,
have
I mean,
that book. It's a
it's
good
a
one.
classic. So, but
It
it's
is.
been around. And Go Dog Go, so they're written by the same author, P.D. Eastman. The monster at the end of the book, which was Grover from the Sesame Street,
We
which
have
is a
that book too.
that was like the beginning of those meta books where,
Yeah.
the characters talking to the reader. And
Interesting.
so I remember that. And Winnie the Pooh was big in our house.
Okay.
And the Frances books, so
Oh,
Bedtime for
yes. The
Frances, but
hedgehog.
yeah.
Wasn't she a hedgehog?
Yep.
Yeah.
She's a
Those were
badger, I
not,
think. Yeah, yeah.
those were not 500 words or less. They were like 4,000 words, weren't they?
Well, that has changed.
Very
Yes,
wordy.
if you look at picture books and really, Are You My Mother and Go Dog Go, those are really considered early readers, right? They're
Right.
the simpler text.
Yes.
But and Winnie the Pooh is also not really
Right. Lots of
classic picture
words.
book. It's
Yeah.
like longer
Illustrated.
chapters. Yes, it's
Yeah.
illustrated, but yeah, it's more like a chapter book, I guess. But the
Interesting.
Francis books, yeah, they're definitely long, but the word count has come way down. And
Okay.
I think one of the reasons for that is attention spans of parents as well as children.
Yeah. Yeah.
And also I think, I mean, you as a teacher may, like when I was in kindergarten was like today's preschools. I think
Yeah.
now kids are learning to read earlier for
Sure.
the good or the bad, depending on how you look at it. And picture books are meant to be read to children.
Hmm.
And if you're pushing kids to read earlier, then the window of, listening to picture books read to them by others is a lot shorter than it was when I was a kid. So I think that's one of the reasons the word count has also gone down, because you're reading it to a younger child
Right.
who has a shorter attention span.
Interesting. And I read somewhere, and I don't know that it was based in fact, though it feels like it is. It was kind of like the single best thing that you can do for your child to kind of guarantee, quote unquote, a solid education is to read to them. Like just
Hmm.
read to them, just read and read and read and read. So
Yep.
yeah, my kids have always enjoyed reading. I love reading. My daughter, when she was 1.5 or 2, she was a late talker, but we had a nanny during COVID, and there was like a month-long time where she was like, all she wants to do is read. She would pick up a book and she would walk over to the nanny and she'd go, read, 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 read. And then she'd read her the book and she'd walk away, like toddle away and get another one. And the nanny was like, thank God Ollie could just play by himself, because literally for 6 hours today, I just read, 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 read to Catherine. So, like, but hey, can't.
That's good. I used to have board books in the kids' cribs, and I would hear my oldest. I remember I'd hear her up there reading.
Hmm.
I'm using air quotes, and I don't know
Hmm.
what she was saying half the time, but she was looking through the book. And
Hmm.
just the act of turning the pages is learning something about
Right. It's
reading,
like
even if you
reading
can't read the
readiness.
words yet. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's funny. Or my kids will be like, "We'll be the teacher and read you the book," and they'll like turn it the way that a teacher does, and because then can
Yeah.
everybody see the illustration? So
Yeah.
it's
And
all good.
kids can understand a lot more before they can
Hmm.
actually read themselves, which is why
Right,
picture books, I love picture books, because it's that, it's partly the story, of course, but it's also the connection between the reader and the child,
right,
which I love. And also it doesn't tie me early. I think early readers would probably be really hard for me to write because it ties me to a specific vocabulary, whereas in picture books, I can use a bigger
right. You can do a
vocabulary because
little.
it's,
Yeah.
yeah.
And you're right. It's that whole feeling of sitting on your mom's lap or your dad's lap or your grandma's lap, or sitting next to them and, reading the page or the bedtime routine or whatever it is. I mean, when my kids, they still like to be read to, but they can both read. But, if, like saying, do you want to play this? I'm like, no, but I'll read you a book. Like I would read books to them all day if that would be, I would love to
And
do that.
and that's probably why I can remember the books that I mentioned as my favorites as a kid, because I remember somebody reading them to me.
Yeah.
Like
And
I
just that.
remember my grandmother reading me Are You My Mother? She had the
Uh-huh.
whole pile of the P.D. Eastman books and the Dr.
Oh.
Seuss books at her house. And I remember that sitting in
Yeah.
her chair.
Like a
Yep.
core memory.
Yep. Remember my grandmother and my grandfather reading me that book. Yep.
Oh, that's real sweet. What is a children's book that you think every family should have? I have
Again, that's
another one.
ridiculous. Gilbert and
Every,
the Ghost.
well, let me say this. I was thinking about this today, and I mean, we have lots and lots of books, but for people who are kind of new parents or don't realize books are expensive to buy if you're going to buy books, but so many places have book sales or book giveaways or people whose kids are older who are getting rid of their books. Like I feel like we've gone through probably 5 cycles of books since I've had kids, because my friends will give me some and then we get too old for that and we pass it on to somebody else. And then, or, like the book has kind of served its purpose and you've read it, but it's not a favorite. And then you keep the
Mhm.
ones that you love. And so maybe the question should be more, you know, is that sort of what you think? Like constant books, the same books? Where did you get the books for your kids? That kind of a thing.
Oh, well, I know a lot of authors, so I get a lot of the
You
books
just
now from
keep
my
getting them.
friends who write books, right? When you asked me this question, because I got the question ahead of time, I thought, oh my gosh, that's ridiculous. I can't think of a
All of
favorite
them.
book.
Every single book I've ever
All
read
of
should
them,
be on
yeah.
my
And
shelf.
but right, but every child is going to have a different, like if you ask somebody else what was your favorite book as a
Right.
child, they're going to come up with a different answer than mine. I mean, they might have some of the same,
Yes.
ones. And if I ask each of my children, they're going to name different ones.
Right.
So, I mean, one that I do think, because some kids I can tell you my kids, my oldest was an early talker. She was an early reader. She was reading Harry Potter on her own in second grade.
Okay.
Extreme opposite of my youngest, who was reading Elephant and Piggy in fourth grade because he felt like I can read an Elephant and Piggy book, like that
And
was
we were
what
so
he
proud
could
of him.
accomplish. That's right. We
We were
were.
so proud of
So
him.
he really just preferred, he knew a lot about story. He loved for me to read to him. It was just challenging for him to read. And because
Yeah.
he was so hung up on trying to learn those words,
Yeah.
he was not enjoyable. So it was a challenge.
Right.
My second child didn't like to read at all until he discovered the nonfiction section of the library. And for him,
Interesting.
it was bringing home books about sharks and reptiles and different dinosaurs, and he was a
Weird
walking, talking
facts.
encyclopedia. Yes, and he's in vet school now. It
Yeah.
worked out really well.
Yeah,
So
there you go.
every kid is going to have a different, idea of like what's the. Now, I had to say, if I had to come up with one book that I would kind of give everyone,
Yes.
it would be The Very Hungry Caterpillar.
Oh.
And the reason is because it's meant for the young
Mhm.
child. I mean, initially, it teaches nonfiction, except for the one glaring error when he calls it a cocoon and it's not, it's a
It's a
chrysalis.
chrysalis. It's
And it's a
fine.
chrysalis, you can correct that.
We could have a
It's,
reprint, maybe. A
but
reprint.
it is a fictional story that teaches nonfiction facts.
Mhm.
It's got it all, in addition to the nonfiction fact about metamorphosis, it also teaches colors, and it has accounting, like it has the days of the week, like it's like all wrapped up into this
All
one
in
book,
there.
and they make a chunky board book version of it, so
Right.
you can give it to a little kid who's gonna, stick
And
it
the
in their mouth.
paper version has those cool holes in it, so you can see
Yes.
what he's
Well, the
eating
board book,
through.
yes, and the board book does too. They can stick the fingers in the holes, so it's a very
It's
tactile
sensory,
experience for
yes.
kids, very sensory. That's right. And then they hear, different foods or whatever, and that's one of
Right.
those ones, read over and over. So that is one of those classics that always comes to mind that I think will never go out of style.
Well, and
It's not something, you
it has
know,
all of that for the kids, and then for the parents it has that, like, you can always turn into something else. Just what's that quote that you see on magnets, like, just when the caterpillar thought his life was over, he turned into a butterfly, and you're like, there it
right.
is, something for
Right.
everyone in that book.
Yes. So
That's
yeah,
a
I
good
think
one.
that's got kind of all in one. But I have
And
so many
I'm gonna
favorites.
give you a
It's like,
thumbs up on that one. That was a
all
good
right, yeah.
question.
I mean, you'd
That
have,
good one.
again, it'd be like, well, what's, your favorite one? What makes you like? Some people like funny books, so you'd
Right.
have to think of, your favorite funny book, or
Right.
some
But that is
people
a
want,
total classic.
yeah.
Total classic. All right. And you were talking about how you had kids with varying interests and various skill levels and whatnot. What advice would you give to a mom whose kids are maybe not, seemingly, or maybe let's change it to, how did you encourage your kids, or what did you do in your own house to surround your children with stories, whether they enjoyed it or not?
That's
Sorry,
right.
kids.
That's a good point, because right, some of them
Right.
had, more
How
trouble
did you
reading it.
try? Well,
Yeah.
how did you
Yeah, because
try?
when you asked that question too, I thought, oh, I'd have to put my social work hat on there, and I
Yeah,
would probably, it would be up, I'd have to talk to the person. Well,
right.
why is it not, like, what's going on in your house? Because I know what I did. And like you said, like I mentioned, all five were very different
Yeah.
readers. And to me, it took, I liked reading,
Yes.
particularly picture books are my favorite format. So I have a lot of picture books. When the Scholastic Book Fair came to school, like buy
Mm-hmm.
a book if you have the money for that. We
Yeah.
would go to the library, regular story time at the library when they were in that preschool and young age.
Hmm.
We would do, so they were exposed to books in the library, and we would check them out. And it gave them the opportunity, and that's a free way to do it. It doesn't
Right.
cost any money to check a book out from the library. And it was a way to expose them to different books. And I could see what they were interested in to bring more, so that's how
Yes.
the librarian comes into help too. Like, oh, my
Right.
kid liked, all these dinosaur books and he's read them all. So
Yeah.
where,
Give me some
can we
new
go
ones.
next?
Yeah.
And I remember my third child, she struggled with reading as well. And she had a great teacher at your school in fourth grade. And she was seeing all the kids reading Harry Potter, and she could not get it through a Harry Potter book. There was
Yeah.
just no
Oh, they
way.
love that Harry
And
Potter. It's like street cred or something.
and that teacher had a great, classroom library, and she helped point her in the direction of some books that might be a little easier for her to read, less,
Yeah.
less
Meaty.
huge, yes,
Yeah.
less
Harry Potter's
meaty.
pretty meaty. Uh-huh.
Yeah, and she eventually discovered this one book that was a chapter book in a series, and she loved the one, and she went through every book in the series. She finally found that one book that was. So I think exposure to different
Right.
books gives them,
Right.
like I said, I didn't know with my second one, except for the nonfiction. He came home and I went, oh, here we are.
Oh, this is what we needed.
This is
Okay.
what we need. More books about
And
dinosaurs and
and nonfiction is hard. Kids tend to go toward fiction, and then when they get older and they're moving toward middle school, we try to push them to nonfiction because that's what they're going to be reading mostly. So kids who are interested in it at an early age are kind of at a little bit of an advantage because that reads differently than a
yeah.
story. So now
Yeah, and
he's
he still is, like I
still
said, he's in
reading
vet school.
nonfiction.
He's still reading nonfiction. He likes history. He's always like history, science. That's
Yeah.
his thing. So
Oh, great. And I was thinking, I mean, like I said, my kids have always liked to read, and my husband likes to read, and I like to read. So we try. For a long time, probably 5 years when my kids were little, I just didn't have like the brain power to read. So I just didn't read. Like,
Mhm.
usually I read before I go to bed at night, and I just didn't. And then one summer, I remember my kids were playing, and I think I was sitting on the couch and I was like scrolling through my phone because no, I was not on the floor playing with them. I had probably done something with them earlier that day. I was having a moment with myself. But anyway, for those who are
You're
going to
allowed to
comment
have time
on
to
me,
yourself.
right. I needed a minute. But I thought, this is silly. My kids are old enough now that if they're playing and I have all this time in the summer, like I'm gonna kind of take back my reading. And we went to the library and whatever, and I got books for myself and I was like, I'm back to it. Because it was like I just didn't have like the mental capacity for it, or I would fall asleep when I was reading. And I thought, this is something I really, really love. So when they were playing, rather than looking at me, seeing me scrolling on a phone, they saw me reading a book, and they probably were like, who cares? But hopefully that message kind of got in there sort of subliminally. And then we also do uh holiday books. I have bunches of holiday books. So we keep them in the attic during the year. And then like just a couple weeks ago, we took out the Halloween and the Thanksgiving books. And they're mostly picture books. And my kids are, they read chapter books, but they still read picture books. And like the amount of excitement around that then they'll spend the afternoon sitting on the floor reading all these books, and they're books that they've read before, but then it's like, can we take out the Christmas books? And it's something that they look forward to. So that's another little, like, if you put books away for a little while and bring them out, they don't have to be holiday books, but just the excitement, kind of like putting toys away and then bringing them back.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah,
brand
that's a
new.
good technique of rotating. Yeah. So
Yeah,
then they're seeing something that they have seen before, but they haven't seen in a while. So it's sort of like a nice
like a brand new
surprise.
thing. Yes, go
Yes.
read
Yeah.
quietly, children, for a few hours, please.
Right. Yeah.
And how old were your kids when you stopped reading out loud to them? I did not write this
Oh,
question.
goodness. I still read them out loud.
Good. That's awesome. Well,
Sometimes
I
I'm
was
reading
going to
them.
say,
Sometimes I will come up, I read somebody else's, a picture book, and I'm like, you
listen
have to
to
read this.
this.
So we have to have story time. So sometimes I will even FaceTime. I'll be like, story time. I have a story I have
Everybody,
to read to
everybody
all of
get
you.
on. Mommy
Yeah,
has a book.
because we live, yes, it's because they all live, different places now.
Right.
But
Oh, but I
yeah,
love that they'll still do it.
yeah,
That's
yep.
awesome.
Sometimes if it's a particular one that I'm like I have to read this one to everybody so they have it. And sometimes I'll run it by or I'll talk about it to certain people. I also gift books at holiday times and for birthdays if I think
Yeah.
it's appropriate for them. And I read my own stories if I'm running through a draft and I'm having trouble with something. I will. That's another way they've helped me. I
Yeah.
will run something by it. I'll ask my oldest who's teaching. I'm like, is this something a kid in your class would say? Like, does this sound like
Read this out loud. Yeah.
right? Read this
That's
out.
good.
Was
That's really helpful.
yeah, so she's helpful with that. And she knows like some word. I remember going by revision. I said, okay, this is gonna, be I just am deciding between these two words. And she's so funny. She'll come back. She's like, oh, that's really hard because they mean two different, she knows
Yeah.
that.
She's
Just
got that
that
background.
word, she's got it. She knows it's not
But those
other
kids,
people are like, who cares? The same thing. It's
right.
fine.
But
But
those
yeah.
kids will have an opinion and they'll tell you. And then
Oh
that
yes,
makes
they
it even
will.
more authentic.
They
So
will. So yeah, so I still get excited about certain books. If you have not read We Don't Eat Our Classmates,
oh,
when I
yes.
read when
Yes.
I read that book the first time, I didn't really know anything about it, and I read it. I was like, this is brilliant. This is a brilliant book. So I had read it to everybody that I could find.
It's so funny. And I feel like books, like, I don't often go to Barnes and Noble, but like I said, we go to the library a lot. But if you go into Barnes and Noble, I'm like, I almost can't come in here. There are so many books that I am going to want to read and buy
Yes.
and keep. And like, I just feel like books have gotten even, it sounds silly, like even better than they used to be just because of the graphics and the interaction and like you were saying, like the Hungry Caterpillar with the holes in the book. Like I feel like there are more things like that in kids' books now, and they're bright colors, and they talk about, fun subjects, but also in subjects that are really important to kids, I think. And I think a book
Yeah.
is often a great way. As somebody had said in college one time, if you as an adult are ever trying to learn something, get a nonfiction kids book and read
Yeah.
that first. And I was like, "Oh, good one," because they give you what you need. And then also, if you have to talk to a child about something like, God forbid, like death of a family member or death of a pet or divorce or something like that, often there's a book that, you can
Yep.
kind of put the story on the book, but it'll lead to conversations. And I think that,
Yep.
that whole world has just kind of opened up and is really, really great.
This is why it's so hard to write a picture book.
Right?
You're doing all of that in 500 words or less.
Exactly. And make it snappy too.
That's
Oh.
right. And make it look pretty. And yeah.
Gosh, yeah,
Yep.
and engaging, and heavy but not too heavy, and funny but not too
Right.
funny. Yeah, it's a big
Right.
balance. All right, switching gears to writing now. I know that, a lot of times kids love to read, but the actual mechanics or the thought process behind, like, I don't have anything to write. I'm like, you've never done anything fun in your whole entire life? I'm like, not that I can think of. I'm like, that is really sad, or like, what's a special time you've spent with an adult in your life? None. I'm like, oh, wow, that's a shame. But what are some ways that you would say parents could encourage kids to write at home? I have a few
Um,
that I want to.
yeah, I was going to say some of the things that I've not necessarily I've done but I've caught some of the things that I did have done in terms of story is and might not necessarily be writing, but we especially in road trips when we're trying to come up with something to do on a long road trip.
Yes.
So we would have that continuous story, like one person starts
Oh,
and then the next person tells the story, so it gets them to tell a story. It's not actually physically writing, but they're
yeah,
coming
love
up
that.
with story ideas. I was a big pen pal person growing up, so I always liked writing notes, thus the Gilbert and the Ghosts. He leaves
Right.
notes for the
Writing
ghost.
notes.
Yeah. And so it's sometimes I wouldn't say that I did this all the time, but I know people who do this, like leaving notes for their kids in their lunch bag or after school. Actually, I would leave notes if I
Yeah.
wasn't here. There would be a note of,
Right.
close the door,
Do
lock the
this,
door
clean
when you
that
come
up,
in or
eat
whatever,
after dinner.
and or write back kind of things,
Yeah.
so for them to answer. Um, we this was not always written, but we had this question jar. My kids still bring it up. Do you still have all those questions in the question jar? We'd have questions sometimes at mealtime. We'd pull
Oh,
out the
yeah.
question and they'd have to answer. So
Yeah.
we weren't necessarily writing them, but really anything like Mad Libs, anything that gets
Mhm.
them writing. So Mad Libs or writing prompts, like you give them. I understand what you were saying. I'm assuming is something like a journal prompt for them at
Right.
school, and then they're like,
Yeah.
it
Like,
might
I
be
have
that they
nothing.
don't
I
have.
have nothing.
Right, I have nothing. I don't want to write it. Right,
It's
they
gonna be
might
a
want to
long
talk
20
about it, but
minutes, my
not
friend.
writing it. Yes, yes. So I remember sometimes it's a case of they just don't want to physically write.
Hmm.
Other times it's they can't come up with ideas.
Right.
So I think that's where the story prompts come in. I used to do with my youngest, we'd walk the dog and we would do the somebody wanted, like, okay, give me a character.
Yeah.
What did they want? It would get us around the block with the dog.
Yeah.
But they can't get it.
Brainstorming.
Why? What is the obstacle? And,
Yeah.
we did the basic story elements. So,
And then add some
yeah,
detail to it.
right. Add
Did
some
now that
detail.
we're
That's right.
talking, my like brain is going. I think, and things that I don't necessarily do at my house, but school wise, which people could absolutely do at their house, is first of all, you take like two or three pieces of, well, I do this in my house, two or three pieces of computer paper and you fold it in half and you staple it. And like, voila, you have a book. And something
Yes.
about that folded piece of paper and here's a book, the kids will write, can I write a story and illustrate it and blah, blah, blah. So that's a fun one. Sometimes, like, if the kids in my class are finished all their work, I'm like, then you can write a book. I'm like, I can write a book. I'm like, yeah, you're writing, but like, it's fun because it's in a book.
Yep.
Another thing that I do in the first week of school is I give the kids a big picture of a heart. And then like, I use myself as an example and we write down things that they know about me and things that I might want to write about. And you just kind of break it into little like organic pieces. So like one piece might have, I don't have a dog, but like your dog's name or
Hmm.
your child's name or your favorite place to go or the beach or if anything that happened to you. And I tell them, if you ever have free time, but you can't think of something to write, go back to your heart. Those are things that are close to your heart. You can read about those. If you take out like a sparkly pen, I mean, my
Oh, yeah.
gosh.
New
Like,
box of crayons that's
yeah,
still all
right.
sharpened.
Go
Yes,
ahead. You
yes,
want to write with marker? Yes, go for
yes.
it for sure. I was laughing when you said you write notes. I leave notes for my kids in their lunchbox. But a couple weeks ago, um, one of my children had had a little moment and was sort of in trouble, and I was in my room, and this little person comes and drops real quick a note on my bed. And it was like, Dear mommy, I'm so sorry that whatever. I hope that you can forgive me. Love such and such a child. And I was like, oh my gosh, he is my child. I used to write those notes to my parents because I had many moments as well. I'd be in my room feeling bad and, I'd be like, do you still love me? I'm so sorry, blah, blah, blah. And then, like my mom would probably let it go for a little while, let me worry about it for a couple minutes. But then, and I wrote back, I forgive you. I just wish you had made a different choice. But I thought, hey, this particular child really doesn't like writing. So it's like, if they're going to write
It's
apology
in,
letters,
right,
and when
right.
one of my children also wrote a note to Bryce Harper, and you have never seen printing like that in your life. I was
Oh,
like, why don't you pretend you're writing to Bryce Harper? And this will just be, I mean, we had details and punctuation and, but I was like, why don't you write
yeah.
to a school
Find what motivates them. That's right. Yeah. I
list?
still have a post-it note that one of my children wrote that says, I love you, love nobody. And of course, I knew who it was, but I still have that post-it note. It was so cute. Like it was supposed
Like
to be like a secret
a
admirer.
secret admirer. I love you,
Right.
but I'm not going to tell you who I am. Okay.
Love nobody.
Probably figure it out. It's another fun one is lists. Like if the kids are like, I don't know what to write, I'm
Yes.
like, write a recipe or make one up or write a birthday list and they're like, I can do that. I'm like, it's writing, go ahead, or
Your wish list, your birthday wish
yeah,
list. What do you want for your
write your
birthday
Christmas list,
or for your
whatever.
holiday?
Or
Yes.
yeah, or what's another one? I'm like, well, go ahead and write a graphic novel. Or I'm
Yes.
like, or illustrate first. That's another technique, like
Yes,
illustrate
draw a
first
picture.
and then
Yeah.
write. So
Hmm.
all of those
Title
different.
ideas. That's another one I like too. So
Oh,
come up with a
that's a good
title for
idea.
the story.
And
Yeah.
then go from there. That's a great one.
Maybe
Um,
if they're intimidated by writing a whole story, they can come up with a story and now just think of a title and you have to write that down. So at least it's a
yeah,
smaller chunk.
right. And
Or
then it can,
breaking up a story into pieces, like who is your main character and just
huh,
write that. And what do
uh-huh,
they want? A bicycle. Why can't they get the bicycle?
yeah.
Whatever. They don't have enough money. At least it's like
And
less
then what?
than
Right. Then you just have to
that.
connect
Right.
the dots
Just
or
little
similar
steps.
kind of a
Yes.
beginning, middle, end thing too. Like, well, what's going to happen in the beginning? What's going to happen in the middle? That kind of, we
Right.
talk about that a lot and summarizing. And
Yep.
so they're good skills. They're hard skills. You don't think about the mechanics of learning how to write and to be a good writer. And I always tell the kids in my class, like, it was the best day ever is not the way that we're going to start the story. So
Right.
I'll have them read the first line of a chapter book that they're reading, and then we talk about what techniques, I just did this last week, did the author use, and they come up with lots of them. And then I have them read the first sentence of a story that they've written, and we all kind of laugh and say, blah. And then they read like their new updated version. And I'm like, do you see the difference? And they get really excited. And so, even just teaching them like one thing, I'm like, and remember, you can now do this every time you're reading the writing. This is not just like here on the carpet. This is like the when we
Right.
write, we remember these things. But
Yeah. Another idea is also if they have a story they like, what for like fan fiction, what would happen in the next book? Like if
oh,
they have a
that's
picture book they like, we don't need our classmates, whatever it is. What happened?
right.
I mean, there are sequels to that, but I mean,
Yeah,
what would Penelope do on the second day or the next day of
right.
school and then
Or
write your own
write
story?
an alternate ending. I know that's a big one.
Yep. Yep.
And write what my third grader came home from school last week and he was like, they had read a story, I forget what it was called, Stone Fox, maybe. I never read the book. Shout out to his teacher if she's listening. Great idea. I might steal it. They had to pick two characters in the book, and this would be for an older child, but who had interacted and write a letter from one to the other. And
Mm.
he was explaining it to me and he said, but you can't if the characters didn't have anything to do with each other in the book, you can't have them write to each other, but two characters who had been important to each other, and then you write them a letter from their perspective. And I was like, ooh, that's a good
Oh,
one
that's
too.
a good one.
So,
Yeah, that is a good one.
all just those, I don't know, all those ideas, stickers, glitter pens. It's
Oh,
all
yes.
fun, right? All fun.
Yes.
Go outside in nature and write down what you see, something like
Right.
um, and one more thing for you. What would you say is something for a person to avoid if they are if they have, let's say, a reluctant reader or a reluctant writer? What is one thing not to do?
I would say to avoid invalidating whatever they do like to read or write.
Hmm.
I know there's an increasing acceptance of graphic novels as being books, but there was a time when a lot of people were like, that's not, real. That's not a real book. It's all
Mhm.
picture like comic books. They're not real books. If your child likes to read comic books, let them read they're reading
Right.
something.
Reading is reading.
If they like to read nonfiction, you're not into nonfiction and they're reading nonfiction, let them read the nonfiction. Whether they might like to read street signs, whatever it is, if they are
Right.
reading
If
or
all
they're
reading is
making
good
lists
reading.
and all they do is make lists or whatever it is. I mean, it's
Yeah.
nice to get them to branch out, but if they don't discount or invalidate what they do like to read and write, because that will keep them going. If they're interested in it for whatever the reason is,
Right.
I think that will
And they'll
help. I mean,
earn the skills.
maybe they like to read, instruction manuals for, whatever. Or, I
Right.
don't know, or how to make Legos. If they're reading the directions on a
Yeah.
game, they're reading something, even
And
if you
that's
don't think
good reading,
they're,
like procedural reading is good.
yeah.
Magazines too, I think, for a kid who maybe gets tired of, or fatigues if they're maybe not a super strong reader or they don't have 30 minutes of time, there are plenty of magazines that kids can read, and it kind of takes them in a million
Yeah.
different
And,
directions.
and
That's a good one.
and not to discount audiobooks, I think also, or still reading to your child. I know it's good to get them to, this is my youngest who had trouble reading. It was important for him to learn the skill of reading for himself,
Yeah.
but because he was working so hard to do all the phonics and figure out, decoding the words to read
Yeah.
them, he was losing the story. And
Yes,
so he
for sure.
still enjoyed me to read picture books to him because he could just sit back and relax and look
And
at the
take it
pictures
in.
and understand the story.
Yeah.
So he wanted me to do that at the same time. And we did get him some, when he was reading longer works, some audiobooks, and it helped him to read along and understand it better when he was
Yes.
listening. So he might not have physically been reading the words, but he was listening
But
to
he
the story.
heard the
So
story, and I think
yeah,
because he certainly was able to understand and discuss, it was the physical act of reading that was tough. So I
right.
agree. That's a good, and that's another good one. You were talking about road trips. We took some Ramona Cleary and Ralph and the motorcycle on a
Oh
trip that we
yeah.
took this summer, and it was kind of nice because it was everybody was sort of getting antsy, and we had been in the car for a while, and we turned it on and they were like quiet. And I thought my younger one, she's in first grade, and I was like, I don't know. But she'd pipe up and be like, I can't believe that he just rode on a motorcycle down the hall. And I was like, oh, okay.
She's
So it
listening.
was, and then we'd take a break. Like they could do maybe a half an hour or so. And then, but that was a great way. And then I kind of felt like they had quote unquote read that book, even though they had
Yeah.
listened to it. So same thing. Okay, so let's do some hot seat questions for you. This has been a great conversation. Thank you so much. All right, I've got some rapid fire for you. Are you ready?
Okay.
And like I said
Sure.
on this week's episode, I'm not going to comment, but I haven't really been able to not do that. So I'm going to try really hard not to comment.
Okay.
Okay, ready. Do you believe in ghosts?
Ooh, I believe in the possibility of ghosts. I've not had an encounter myself, but I'm not going to discount it.
Okay, I like that. I will not comment. Favorite Halloween candy?
Oh, anything pretty much chocolate. I'm probably partial to Reese's peanut butter cups are
Mm,
probably,
can't beat that combination of chocolate
yeah,
and
it's
butter.
pretty good.
What's your favorite place to write and what's your favorite place to read? Are they the same? Are they different?
Um, favorite place. My favorite place is actually outside if I can do it. If the weather
To do both,
cooperates.
to read and write?
More writing than reading, but reading as well. I something about being outside in nature, it feels like it's my space to read, but I can't do that, if it's snowing.
Right.
So that doesn't
You're on
always work, but
vacation, but you're
but that would
writing.
be, but like at the beach, I can do it. Sitting out in the back patio, I
Yeah.
like that.
It kind of
I
makes it
I
feel
tend to be sitting at my kitchen counter, but
but in your
it works
mind, you're
there
at the
too.
beach.
But yeah,
So it's
yes,
okay.
that's right.
And do you like to get like cozier when you read? Like I like to, here I am commenting. I like to lay in bed and read. That's my favorite place to read. I don't know why, but if I were
I
writing, I would need to like sit up.
I do. The problem is because you've heard me talk about being, up
Fall
late.
asleep.
I read a few pages and I fall asleep.
Yep.
So,
Me too.
yeah. So it becomes a little dangerous. So I
Okay.
do leave my novels, whether they're, children's novels or adult novels, by the bedside, and I tend to do that. But they take a lot longer for me. I'm a slow
Yeah.
reader in general, but they take a lot longer for me to go through. But yes, I'd be like to be cozied up too. But the problem with being cozy is then I fall asleep. So
Right. And then if you fell asleep, you have to go back. It's like two steps forward, two steps back.
yeah,
Because you're like, what was I reading when I fell asleep?
exactly.
Do you have a book that you're currently reading?
I just finished The Haunting of Bellington Cottage, which is the middle grade I was talking about, the friend of mine who wrote it. So
Ooh.
if you're a middle
Okay.
grade reader, it's a little it is a little spooky. It is
And what?
about a child who's going to on a like a wintry vacation with her family and friends of the family, and she's going to be
Okay.
seeing this girlfriend of hers that they haven't seen each other in a couple of years, and when they saw each other last, they made this spooky haunted house out of where they were, to scare the parents.
Yeah.
And so she brings all of her supplies to make a spooky haunted house. And then a real ghost shows up.
Oh,
So the
dun,
house is
dun,
actually
dun.
haunted. So it
Maybe we'll
is
link
a little
that.
spooky.
I'll link that in the show notes too. I'll ask you for that title again, and then we can put
Okay.
that in there in case.
Yep, that's a good one. It's her second book.
And
So we've been
it looks like
following each other.
more of a chapter book, right? And yours is a
Yes,
picture
this
book.
is middle grade, so like 8 to 12
Okay, great.
ages
All
or
right.
up. I mean, obviously.
Um, I said what were your three favorite picture books when your kids were young, but I feel like we sort of already answered that, and that's a cruel question to ask. So I will
It is
just,
a cruel
who's
question.
your
It's kind of
favorite
like,
child? No, I'm just
yes,
kidding.
who's your exactly. I was
Instead,
going to say it's
tell
like
me
asking
who's
who
your
your
favorite.
favorite child is. It depends on the day.
There you go. So many books to pick from, so many children to pick from. All right,
That's right.
pencil or pen?
Uh, pen.
Oh, okay. Pizza or cheeseburger?
Pizza. I don't eat red meat at all, so
What
pizza
about
is
a turkey
easy.
burger? Turkey burger?
I would do that, but I'd still pick pizza, I think. I'd choose pizza
I think I
over.
would too. All right,
Yeah.
final question. You like to bake. What's your favorite thing to bake?
I lost you for a second there. You froze. The favorite what? What thing to
Your
bake?
favorite thing to bake.
Cookies in general. I have a lot of cookie recipes. I like that over cakes and pies.
Okay. I
But
feel
yeah,
like
I
they're
like to bake
like
cookies.
faster and easier, and you feel like your success rate is higher because if you mess up a
I
cake, like you're
I
done.
guess. I guess. Yes,
You know what I
that's
mean? Where
true.
like you're like, oh, that like tray of cookies I left in a couple minutes too long. Like you can try again. You have
Yes,
another.
that's true. That's true. And I like the way
Well,
they taste. So yeah.
right. Let's just eat them instead.
Right.
Well, thank you so much, listeners, and thank you, Heather, so much for joining us today and talking about raising readers and writers from a young age. Heather's website will be linked in the show notes if you would like to take a look at or purchase her books or learn more about her on her website. I hope you enjoyed listening to Mom's Work today. Please like, share, and follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Mom's Work Podcast and listen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or really wherever podcasts are available. Um, if you would like to send an email or say hi or share feedback, please feel free to send me an email at momsworkpodcast@gmail.com. And have a great day. And Heather, have a nice Halloween.
Thank you, you too.
Thanks. I'll talk to you soon. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.